Oh crap! I hit the live button, Ben.
Are we back? Are we on?
Oh wait! Oh no! There you are.
Hey, fourth
Sweet.
string coming in hot.
That is how you do a fourth string intro, by the way.
Yep.
That is how you do. And for the first time ever, 8 o'clock on the dot.
Boom, baby. Look at that.
Yeah.
Killing
By
it.
the way, if you saw the little notifications, I have cleared these things 10 times today. They keep coming back. I don't know. I don't know what the issue is with Apple. I don't get it.
I don't know what the issue is with my green screen. This is weird.
Well, it looks like you're on a brick wall.
Well, kind of.
It looks like you're integrated into a brick wall.
Yeah.
Occasionally, you are becoming the brick wall.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Let's see here. This is how we do it on this show.
It is
Into
how
a
we do it.
blur.
Usually, about minute 7 is when you get content.
When we hit our stride, right?
I don't know if we ever hit our stride. I would just say minute 7 is when you start getting content. And see, I just remember to turn the light on my webcam on. So we're off first minute. I mean, hitting
Killing
it hard.
You're
So-
welcome, listeners. AKA CJ's mom.
Oh, yeah. Actually, she's not even listening right now. They're at a birthday party.
Oh,
But she'll listen later, I'm
Well-
sure.
hello from the past.
Yeah. Hello from the other side. That happened.
And now we
All
got
right.
a copy strike.
Can we
Copyright
talk about
strikes?
football now?
Please.
Okay. Oregon, Washington. And now Colorado's in the Big 12. And it sounds like by the end of next week, there will be more teams in the Big 12, but we don't know who yet.
So we going
So-
from Power 5 to Power 3?
Well, the ACC is still a thing. And there's now reports, as of 5 minutes ago, that Oregon and Washington are rumored to be in the mix for the ACC. Yeah, here you go.
ACC?
ACC.
Well, that would make it more competitive.
ACC
sure.
looking at possibly adding Oregon and Washington per report. Now this is
All right, so Pac-12 is just over.
so okay. Well, let's talk about the timeline here. So
Okay.
Colorado last week says they're going to the Big 12. I was
Prime,
not
baby.
shocked by that.
Prime
I
effect.
figured that would be the first domino to fall. Okay,
Yeah.
so that happened. Then shortly thereafter, reports start coming out. The Big 12 is looking to add more teams, but we don't know who. But supposedly there's like 3 teams they've got their eyes on. Now I've got my suspicions. And then a few days ago, we start hearing Oregon and Washington might be part of the next editions. It's like, okay, well, from a brand perspective, that makes a whole lot of sense. And then yesterday, or maybe it was the day before yesterday, it was within the past 48 hours, report comes out, Brett McMurphy tweets that the Big 12 isn't really interested in adding Oregon or Washington simply because they would go to the Big 10 as soon as they received an invite. And then today, there's a report that comes out that says the Big 10 is not interested in Oregon or Washington. And then shortly thereafter, the ACC is in talks about adding Oregon and Washington. So you kind of start to piece everything together and see what's happening. And it becomes fairly evident that all of these leaks, almost all of them, with the exception of the Big 12 is considering them, is coming from the Oregon and Washington camps. They're the ones leaking this. I don't think the ACC has had one discussion about adding those 2 programs. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it. I think the ACC would sooner go after West Virginia. I think the ACC would sooner go after Central Florida, something like that. In fact, I'm a little bit surprised they didn't. Maybe that was to appease Florida State. But nevertheless, these are the camps leaking it. And then here's the reality of this, Ben. I think if Oregon and Washington actually wanted the Big 12, and if the Big 12 wanted them, the deal would be done right now. And it would have been done before Colorado. Okay. But the reality, the truth of this is Oregon and Washington really want the Big 10. They both feel like Big 10 schools. And I think the Big 10 wants them too, but here's the problem. One school contains all the dominoes. One school contains all the moving pieces. And if they fall, everything's going to get locked into place. And if they don't, everything's kind of left into this weird amoeba that we're in. You know what school I'm talking about? Notre Dame.
Ah.
Exactly. The Big Ten wants Notre Dame. And
Yep.
what is the number one thing that, if it happens, would keep Notre Dame away from the conference probably for forever? Is having more programs to share the revenue with, right? Now, they brought in USC and UCLA because they could bring in LA revenue.
Yep.
Okay, well, I can tell you right now, there ain't any revenue in Washington or Oregon. It just ain't there. They're nice
Only
programs.
Nike money.
There
There's
is
Nike money at Oregon, but
yeah,
only
they're
from
nice programs.
one guy.
They're really
Yeah.
nice programs, but they do not bring the revenue that it would take to make sense for that. So Notre Dame's big thing has been, hey, if you bring in more and more programs that aren't bringing in revenue, we don't want in, because for us to justify cutting the NBC contract to come join your conference, the revenue, the numbers have to be there. And if we're having to share revenue with 17 other schools, it's just not there, right?
Yep.
So they would potentially be interested in the Big Ten, especially if the ACC falls apart the way it's rumored to be. But they have no interest in the Big Ten if the Big Ten's going to go and add the ACC conglomerate, or if the Big Ten's going to go and add the 2 Pac-12 schools, right? But if Notre Dame isn't going to the Big Ten, they would absolutely want Oregon and Washington, right? So this is, I think, becoming a massive game of chicken. And the Big 12 actually contains all the leverage here, because if you're Oregon and Washington, what are you going to do? Are you going to wait while your peers continue to bolt and go into different programs? And are you going to risk not really having a home? Because you can't survive independent the way Notre Dame's been able to, right? So are you going to risk that? Or are you going to risk going to the Big 12, where I think the Big 12 has basically said, we want you here, but we're going to negotiate a contract where your only way out is through a massive payout. We're not just going to let you leave willy-nilly if you come into our conference, right? Because, like, if you come in July and the Big 10 calls you in September, like, that's fine, but we want to be compensated if that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those two schools are very much in play for the Big 12. I wouldn't be shocked if that deal is done by like tomorrow, but the big piece is going to be the viability of what happens to those programs if they were to get called on the Big 10. And are they willing to basically say the Big 12 is going to be our home for the next 10 years? Are they willing to basically wave the white flag on going into the Big 10? Or do they want to continue to risk? Maybe they get an invite to get into the Big 10, but now that you have to stay in the Pac-12 and potentially watch that whole conference dwindle away while this is happening. Did I put that, if I summarize that well, Ben?
You have. It's wild what's going on in college football, because SEC, Big Ten, the 2 main conferences now, and you've got the Pac-12, which hasn't really been relevant in quite some time, even though they have some good teams at the moment. The ACC, who has top-heavy, 1 team over the past decade, 2 teams potentially this year with Clemson and FSU. The Big 12, who, are they relevant anymore?
The Big 12?
Yeah.
I think so. Are they as relevant as the SEC or the Big 10? No. And really, quite frankly, this year, or next year, they're not going to be as relevant as the ACC, as long as those programs can stick together.
That's what I'm saying.
You've got some
so,
fun programs here, though.
With the Big 12 and the Pac-12, which one is less relevant?
Oh, the Pac-12, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which
100%.
is wild, because there's some championship caliber teams in the Pac-12. I mean, TCU went to the title game last year and got smoked. It was kind of a fluke. It was the team that,
I mean, I would think TCU being there is the fluke.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah.
So, like, the Big 12 shouldn't have had someone there.
But I
Texas
wouldn't have
and
said
Oklahoma are
TCU was a
leaving.
title contender. They
I wouldn't
made the
either.
game. Yeah, but I don't think they were a contender. And I don't think
Yeah.
if Oregon made it this year, they'd be a contender either. I think they'd get slaughtered by Georgia, LSU, Alabama,
But see,
insert
what
SEC school here.
I'm thinking here is you've got 3 mediocre conferences that the big teams from those conferences are vying for either SEC or Big Ten play, and it makes more sense for like the premier programs, regardless of their actual income, to be wanting to go to the Big Ten just based on the rest of the Pac-12 right now.
Yeah.
The move for Colorado from Pac-12 to Big 12 is like going from, I don't know, man, Granny Smith apples to like Fuji apples. Like you're
Well,
still eating
no,
apples.
because Colorado should have never left the Pac or the Big 12 to begin with.
Yeah.
That was like it made no sense. Like they're not a Pac-12 team. They don't fit into that conference whatsoever. I think the Pac-12 had this idea of adding a couple of like mountain time zone teams, and Colorado and Utah kind of fit the bill. But
Uh-huh.
Colorado's always been a Big 12 school. I mean,
So
they're much closer to a Texas or a Texas Tech than they are a Washington State.
why doesn't the Big 12 and Pac-12 just look to combine into a super conference? That's
Well,
the
because
longevity.
I think, well, not necessarily, because I think there are some programs academically and for other reasons the Big 12 doesn't want. Like, I don't think the Big 12 wants Stanford or Cal. Just don't think they bring anything. And then you get into profit sharing from all these schools. So it's like, okay, you have one big super conference of 24 teams, but there's only so much money for it. And now you're going to split it 24 ways. You know, I think what the Big 12 is looking to do is get to 14, maybe 16 teams at the very, very most. And, you know, have multiple time zones. I think their ideal would be they have an East Coast, Central, Mountain, and West Coast time zone. That's why they brought in Central Florida, is now they're into the East Coast time zone, which I've been saying the Big 12 should have been getting into more time zones for forever. I thought the Pac-12 should have done the same thing. Like the Pac-12's biggest mistake is not going after Texas and Oklahoma 10, 12 years ago when those programs were vocally not in support of staying in the Big 12.
Yep.
I mean, like you had the Oklahoma AD coming out and talking about how they were dissatisfied with the Big 12. Like when they left, I wasn't shocked. I was shocked that the Pac-12 didn't even try to make an effort to get
at that point in time. USC was just coming off of like a dynasty, and Oregon had just been to the national championship like 2 times in 4 years. So
yeah.
The Pac-12 was much more relevant than they are now.
Well, and the other thing that the Pac-12 has always had is a watchability issue because they'll start games at like 10 o'clock at night. You just can't start a game in Arizona on a September on a Saturday at like 3 o'clock. It's way too hot. So they literally can't start half their games until like 10 o'clock at night, right? But the thought of bringing in like a Central Florida is it's like, okay, we can now have Oklahoma State go to Central Florida, right, and be seen on an East Coast time zone, right? The idea of saying, okay, like if you're the Pac-12, like you're going to bring in these Arizona schools into the Big 12, right? Well, now I can get Arizona State on a 3 o'clock time frame on the East Coast, which means more East Coast eyes are watching a team out West we normally wouldn't get to see. Right. So, I mean, the Pac-12 has never done any of that, though. They've always had like these weird times, the Pac-12 after dark thing, and nobody wants to watch or be a part of it. And it's gotten to a point where these California recruits are like, why would I go to USC where nobody's going to be up watching me when I could go to Alabama and be seen on CBS at 3 o'clock every Saturday? Right. I mean, if you're a potential NFL prospect, Alabama's way more attractive.
No, 100%. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating to see what plays out over the next couple of weeks with expansion. I think Oregon and Washington are fascinating brands. I think the idea of the ACC going after them is really interesting. I don't know that it's enough to save Clemson and Florida State from bolting, right? But I think it's enough to savor your conference if they do bolt.
Where does Clemson and Florida State go? SEC?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I would think they'd go SEC. UNC would go Big Ten, 100%. UNC would go Big Ten. I don't know if Duke gets into the mix. Basketball wise, it would make a lot of sense. Virginia would go Big Ten. And I mean, it's interesting. Virginia, I think, is more attractive to the Big Ten than Virginia Tech is, just because of the academia and stuff that brings to the Big Ten, which they've always been about. Virginia Tech is really kind of like good academics, good sports, but not really moving the needle in anything.
Yeah. They were much more attractive, 15, 20 years ago.
When you had Miami and Virginia Tech
in the Big East.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, I saw this like meme a couple of days
Yeah.
ago. My favorite meme ever. It was like, imagine if conference realignment looked like this. And it was literally like how all the conferences were set up in 2001. And like, it looks like, oh my God, this is a dream scenario. Like if you had like Miami and Virginia Tech like back against each other, and like you had Texas and Texas A&M in the same conference again.
Oh, man. Golden days.
Exactly. So,
But yeah, like resurrect the Big East. Like, here's the thing that's wild is conference realignment right now is like going between, you've got the Power Five, who like someone had deemed that at one point in time. There's no reason for the ACC, the Big 12, or the Pac 12 to necessarily exist tomorrow when you could get the cream of the crop and put them together into a conference where it actually matters.
I think from a competitive standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. From a entertainment and TV contract standpoint, I don't know if it brings.
Yeah, those things take so long to actually develop.
But today is Big 12 preview day, which I'm excited. I said 7 minutes would be our actual content.
17 this time.
17.
Hey, it was good. It was a good discussion. Everyone enjoyed it.
It was. I mean, look, conference realignment's a big thing. I've been a big fan of it. I'd love to see Liberty get into the Big 12. That should be their next edition.
All right.
Sleeping giant. With a lot of money, by the way. All right, so let's do our Big 12 rankings. So we don't go super in-depth when we do this piece of it. We have multiple things we're going to hit throughout the show. One thing that I'm going to surprise you with, Ben, that we're going to talk about is out of the new additions to the conference, which one performs the best this year. So let's go 1 through 14. Give me your Big 12 rankings.
Let me pull up the Big 12.
Okay. Ben's pulling up his
rankings.
I'm going to give you mine. So I have Texas winning the conference. By the way, the only reason why I don't have Kansas State winning the conference is the game between Texas and Kansas State is in Texas, and Texas has won 6 straight games against Kansas State. As good as Kansas State has been, and as all over the place Texas has been, that blew my mind. Second, I have Kansas State. They just have so many starters returning. They have Will Howard coming back at quarterback. They're going to be great. Third, Baylor. This will be a bounce back year for Dave Aranda. Fourth, Texas Tech. I'm excited to talk about Texas Tech later in the podcast. I think they're one of the most fascinating teams in the conference. Fifth, the Fighting Gus Malzahn's, UCF. Sixth, Oklahoma. I don't know if that's even going to be good enough to save Brent Venables' career. I've got some big concerns about him. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Seventh, TCU. They go from 4 super close wins last year to a much, much tougher schedule, and I don't think it's going to bounce their way as much as it did. They're going from 5 Big 12 home games to 5 Big 12 road games. They're going from a team that had 18 returning starters to a team that only has 10. This will not be the same TCU team. 8th, Oklahoma State. I don't know if they can get past 7-5, Ben. I think they're right back where that is. Quarterback situation, Spencer Sanders gone. Tough to replace. 9th, Iowa State. I don't know if Matt Campbell is everything we thought he was 3 or 4 years ago. 10th, BYU. 11th, Kansas. Got off to a hot start last year. Fell off the edge of the map towards the end of last year. 12th, Cincinnati. They are losing Luke Fickell and bringing in Scott Satterfield. Scott Satterfield is a good coach. Don't know if he's great. 13th, West Virginia. I think they've got the wrong coach. They got to make a move. And then 14th, West Virginia's old coach, Houston, I think is going to finish last in the conference. I don't think they're good at all. They're also losing Clayton Tune this year and Nathaniel Dell, two very tough pieces to replace. So there's my Big 10 preview. Ben, or Big 12 predictions. Ben, yours.
Yes,
Ben
sir.
Together.
Big
He gets a week to
12
prep for the
football.
podcast. And he waits until minute 20 into the podcast to prep. He gets a whole week, minute 20 in the podcast. Oh, I should start prepping. I love Ben.
No, I don't even start prepping then. I just pull up like a list and I'm like, who do I like? Who do I like in this?
You know the problem with this? The problem with this is
that you carry
we're
us
going to get
on
the
your
Big 12.
back.
No, we're going to get the Big 12 championship day, and your predictions are going to outperform mine. That is the problem. Is I sit here and I research all week long, and I do hours and hours of research. I sat outside today, did research while throwing a frisbee to my dog and drinking whiskey. It was about the best way to spend a Sunday afternoon, and I do all this research. I feel so good about my predictions, but Ben's going to beat mine. Just naming teams off a list.
Just naming teams off a list. Just based on how I like their uniforms.
Oh,
and
great.
The history
it's like
of
my
their
wife
program.
picking March Madness brackets.
That's right. That's actually how I pick March Madness. I look at the numbers and then I say, screw the numbers. Who are these people?
Oh my God. All right. 1 through 14, Benjamin.
I always have Duke going to the Final Four, by the way.
Appreciate it. I need you to stop doing that because they haven't been in forever. Stop picking that.
Okay. So I think you're right. Texas is the top team to beat, loaded with talent, incredible coach, incredible quarterback play. They should win the conference outright, and really, really solid team there. My second team is gonna be UCF, the Fighting Gus Malzahn's.
Is number two?
Number 2.
Wow.
Because I did not do any prep, so I'm just going to pick teams as I go down here. Kansas State is after them because Kansas State's usually pretty good. Then I've got Iowa State at number 4. I've got the Bearcats, Cincinnati at number 5.
Okay, Ben's is not going to be better than mine.
BYU, number 6. I've got Oklahoma, number 7. We'll see how Oklahoma does this year. Oklahoma is there's a good chance they fire their coach, who was a good defensive coordinator.
I do think there's a good chance.
The year they go into the SEC.
Well, that's the thing is that I think the expectations this year. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Here's the crazy thing, and let me just throw this out right now as like a preview. Who has taken a program that is traditionally absolutely awful and a basketball school and turned them into a premier college football team in the SEC East?
Mark Stoops.
That's right. Who has a history of being in the program of Oklahoma?
Bob Stoops.
That is
correct. But if
correct.
Mark Stoops was going to get the job, why didn't he get it last year?
Because he said no. But they're going to throw a whole dump truck of money
at Mark Stoops.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to come back to this discussion in a bit because I think it's interesting. All right, keep going, Ben.
All right. So
after
Oklahoma State, he's a man. He's, probably 50 at this point, maybe older. After that, Kansas, just because I love the Jayhawks. I've got Baylor. I don't even know what number I'm at anymore. Baylor way down there because Baylor can't play offense. Then we have Who is left? TCU.
Who's
TCU.
left? Oh,
TCU is
crap.
terrible. Texas Tech and ending it out, West Virginia. Sorry, Pat McAfee.
I don't know that you ever named Houston.
They got dropped from the conference.
Okay. I'm never letting Ben. I don't know why I even tell you what conference we're doing next. Doesn't matter.
I forgot.
Okay. Conference championship prediction, Ben. So I mean 1-2. You've got Texas 1 and Central Florida 2. So the money you're putting on conference champion or on coming in second rather is a team quarterbacked by a former Ole Miss wide receiver.
That's right. Did you see what Gus Malzahn did in 2013?
Yes.
Yeah. Welcome to 2023. It's been a decade. It's coming back. Mark my words.
Okay.
Gus Malzahn is the best coach in the U.S. when he doesn't play with position players.
I will tell you this about Central Florida. Let's talk about them. By the way, this is my most exciting team. So that's always one of our superlatives is who's your most exciting team. Central Florida is my most exciting team to watch on the conference because I don't know what we're going to get. I think the schedule is super workable. For one, they don't have to play Texas. That's a big win. Their road games, they're going to play at Kansas State. Now, I think that's a brutal place to play. At Kansas State, at Kansas, at Oklahoma, at Cincinnati, at Texas Tech. Those are all tough. Other than Kansas State, I wouldn't be surprised if they won all those games. They also have an easy start to their schedule. Kent State, Boise State, Villanova. So they're going to start off 3-0, and they really get an opportunity, I think, to figure out their offense, figure out any question marks they have on this team. And they're bringing back 15 starters, which is huge. But it's really, I think, going to be in the hands of John Rhys Plumlee. I think the new offensive coordinator, Darren Henshaw, who was the offensive coordinator at UAB last year, he comes in. I don't know how he's going to do. And then they're also bringing in a first-year defensive coordinator, Addison Williams. So we've got 2 first-year defensive coordinators, 15 starters coming back. We've got a quarterback who's good, but let's be reminded, he was a wide receiver at Ole Miss. Now, he was a wide receiver that they would use in quarterback formations occasionally. He had that talent. I watched him play live. He's good, but he's a little bit of a throwaway there at Ole Miss, and Gus Malzahn's kind of bringing him in and figuring it out. The one thing they do have, if he gets injured, is this quarterback room has a lot more depth than it's had before. I think that's huge. And then there's this too, Ben. This is Gus Malzahn's third year here at Central Florida. I don't think he came to Central Florida to make it his permanent home. I think he came to Central Florida to leverage it for an SEC offer. And I think there's going to be, there always are 3 to 4 SEC schools. What's that?
He wanted to coach at Arkansas for 20 years.
And that's what we talked about 2 weeks ago, is Arkansas, who, by the way, Arkansas's offensive coordinator is gone. We're talking about him later because he's now at a Big 12 school, right? So he's now gone. And I don't know that they're going to get the same production out of KJ Jefferson this year that they've gotten. Arkansas, I think, is probably on pace for a losing season. So if that happens, right,
they should be the worst
they move on? What's that?
They should be the worst in the West. I think we both picked them to be the worst.
Is brutal, right?
Yeah.
So all that to say, with Gus Malzahn in Central Florida, I think he's going to put a big emphasis this year on having a couple of marquee wins, getting to about 9 to 10 win games. Now, I don't think it's going to be enough to get them into the Big 12 championship, but the reason I've got them 5th in the conference is because I think we're going to get his most creative offense he's ever had.
Exactly. So think back to 2013 when he took a cornerback and took him to the national championship game and was 13 seconds away from winning it.
That's true.
That's what you're going to see this year. This is Nick Marshall 2.0. And it's going to be nuts.
And that team was the wildest team I've ever watched play.
It was insane.
Yeah. You had the kick 6 that year. You had which, by the way, as crazy as the kick 6, as crazy as that was, The ending to the Georgia game was crazier.
Yep, I was
That's
there.
the craziest ending to a football game I've ever seen in my life.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
I was
The
at that
tipped-
game.
You were at that game? The tipped pass
Double
into
tipped.
his hands. Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. So, no, I think Central Florida is going to be easily the most exciting team to watch. And I think, Ben, it seems like you're kind of on the same path with that too. Oklahoma is going to be fun as well. But Oklahoma last year just got blown out and he get no offensive creativity. And Dylan Gabriel, I don't know that he can stay healthy throughout a whole season. I don't. But speaking of Oklahoma, who's your hottest seat, Ben? My hottest seat is Brent Venables.
Yeah, it has to be, because you don't get a premier job like Oklahoma and go and win 6 games or whatever he did last year.
Here's the biggest problem I have with Venables.
Mhm.
Anytime you bring in a defensive coach, or anytime you
Yep.
bring in any coach, the side of the ball that you coached on as a coordinator, anytime you bring in a coordinator, how is your team on that side of the ball? Oklahoma's defense last year
Exactly.
was awful. They
Abysmal.
let Kansas State score 41 points. Like, Kansas State was a good team, not a high power offensive team. TCU put up 55. Texas beat them 49-0. Kansas, a game which Oklahoma won, put up 42 points on them. Baylor, a team that didn't have an offense last year, put up 38 on them. And Texas Tech put up 51 on them in an overtime game. This defense last year was just terrible, Ben, at just about every end of it. And that was also the one side of the ball. They didn't lose a lot of players either. So, I mean, for this team to have success, Dylan Gabriel is going to have to be great. Drake Stoops, who is a starting receiver on this team, is going to have to be great. And Marcus Major, I do think he will be great, but I don't think Marcus Major is enough in this brutal of a conference that is the Big 12. I don't think Marcus Major is enough to take this team to 9-10 wins. And then here's the kicker. Do you know who their defensive coordinator has been? You'll be you will feel confirmed about every end of your Oklahoma analysis once I tell you this name. You don't know who it is.
Nope.
Ted freaking Roof.
I hate that guy.
As do I. He was the head coach at Duke.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
he sucks.
He is.
He had the worst defense I've ever
everywhere
seen.
he's been.
How does he keep
Everywhere
getting
he's
jobs?
been. I don't know. How
Look,
was
he
he the
must be-
defensive coordinator at Oklahoma freaking Homa?
He must be the nicest guy ever. For people to
I
keep
would get
hiring
it at
him.
Tulsa. I would get it at Tulsa. Let's pull up. Hold on. Ben, talk about something while I pull up Ted Roof.
Ted Roof is one of the most frustrating coaches to watch, because he seems like he has no idea what's going on.
He doesn't.
When he calls plays, it's like he doesn't even care what the other side of the ball is doing. He is just going to run the play that he had drawn up, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, because it's not going to, because you're not paying attention to what is going on, and you're not calling a defensive play to stop an offense, you're calling a defensive play like a kid who's just playing with a playbook in NCAA 2014. And you're going to get burned almost every single time, especially when you play against teams that know what they're doing and are competent, which majority of the teams he's going to play are. You're not playing West Virginia every day, buddy. And so good luck, Oklahoma. Last year they had on average like 30 or 40 points scored on them. Make it 50 this year. I'm saying any game of Oklahoma, I'm taking the over. I am going to take the over because Oklahoma's going to get burned in every game.
Yeah. So, by the way, Ted Roof is a head coach at Duke. His first year 2-9, second year 1-10, third year 0-12, last year 1-11. His best winning percentage was when he took over as an interim head coach and he went 2-3 during their last 5 games. By the way, it should be noted in 2006, and I am like a huge Duke football fan. 2006, Duke was shut out by FCS Richmond that year. They didn't score a point, and they were actually shut out in 3 of their first 4 games. Duke never scored more than 20 points, or 28 points until their last game of the year against UNC, which is a big rivalry. He is the
I don't
best-
understand.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to blaspheme a guy on our podcast.
His head
I don't-
coaching record is 6-45. He has 6
and
wins.
45. Yeah, 6 wins, 45. And everywhere he's been, Georgia Tech, defense was terrible. He goes to NC State. They won games. Their defense stunk. Appalachian State, their defense was okay, but they didn't play against anybody. Then he goes to Vandy. Defense was awful. He goes to Clemson in 2021. They had one of their worst defensive years in a long time. When he was at Auburn, their defense was awful. Awful those 3 years. He was a defensive coordinator in Minnesota, and they were bad. Everywhere this guy has been, he has been nothing short of just terrible. And I think he's going to be the downfall of Brent Venables. And I think the fact that Venables gave him the defensive coordinator job,
Yeah, that's the downfall right there.
I mean, that tells you what you need to know about Brent Venables. He brought him over from Clemson.
Mhm.
This is Venables saying, this is my guy. I'm putting my name on this guy. That will get Brent Venables fired from this job. And I
As
think
it should.
Well, yeah. And here's going to be the thing, Ben. If you look at the schedule, first off, they're going to play Southern Methodist second game of the season. Now, that's a home game. Southern Methodist is a good group of 5 team that's bringing back 16 starters and has a really smart head coach in Brett Lashley. They're also going to play right after that. They're going to go at Tulsa. Now, Tulsa isn't necessarily a great group of 5 team, but they are definitely a good one. And I'm trying to pull it up. Hold on. They have got, I believe they've got a lot of returning starters. But they only have 9. Tulsa only has 9 returning starters. They're bringing in first-year head coach Kevin Wilson. But that game's at Tulsa. If Oklahoma goes into Tulsa and loses that game, does Venables get fired on the spot?
Yes.
What about even if they win? If they go into Texas, and let's say they're Iowa State, Cincinnati, Tulsa, SMU, Arkansas State, 5 games. Let's say they're 4-1 going into Texas, and they get blown out again. You got a bye week right after it. Would you fire him then? If you get blown out by Texas for a second year in a row, would you fire Brent Venables?
I mean, that's tougher, right? It depends on if they've already made up their mind or not. If I've got Mark Stoops ready to come over, yes. I'm doing it. Pulling the trigger.
Yeah, I
Get him outta
don't know
here.
that he's going to get fired mid-season, but I think there's a number of games that if they lose those games, specifically these select number of games, Tulsa, Texas, Oklahoma State, and they aren't on pace to win like 9 or 10 games, you have to consider letting go of Brent Venables. Like, you cannot go into the SEC and think that if you're going to be 6-7 in the Big 12, you're going to go into the SEC and just run through the conference. Because I got to tell you, the SEC doesn't give you a Kansas in the middle of your schedule. It doesn't happen. You might get a Vanderbilt once every like 3 or 4 years, but that's about it.
Yep.
You don't get a West Virginia thrown in there. You're going to get an Arkansas team chock full of 4-star recruits that is desperate to win so they can get to a bowl. Good luck if this is what you're going into the SEC. Like, could you imagine Dylan Gabriel and Drake Stoops being your quarterback receiving combination going into an SEC conference? You would get slaughtered. It would be, if you put that combo in the SEC West today, Ben, it would be the worst quarterback receiver SEC combo in the SEC West right now.
Yeah,
Like
it would be
serious.
comparatively, yes.
Yeah. So like when
Yep.
you think about that, how are you going to compete?
Well, you're not going to have either of those guys next year.
No.
So probably by getting better guys. No offense to either of them. Dillon Gabriel looked amazing before he broke his leg.
He
when
did.
he was at UCF like a decade ago. Because the boy's been playing college football for like 10 years. I'm not joking.
He's been around
I
a
think
while.
It literally is that. When he was before his terrible injury, and for a lot of people that would have been a career-ending injury, and for the fact that he's still playing, like kudos, guy's a fighter, incredible.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not the same player. And how can you be? You literally got your leg broken in half. So,
this is not an indictment on like Dillon Gabriel as a person.
No,
Dillon Gabriel might be a fine college quarterback, but he can't be your starter at Oklahoma. Like you can't tell me out of all the transfers that was available, this is what you're coming into the year with. Like
Oklahoma had 3 Heisman quarterbacks like in a row.
Yeah,
and now they have Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah, I know.
It's just.
Yeah, I mean,
there's so much talent to be had.
I'm trying to think. Like, I'm trying to think of SEC teams that might have a worse quarterback receiving duo. Kentucky, maybe, but Kentucky's still bringing in Devin Leary from NC State. He's going to be good. Vandy, I guess, because they're Vandy.
Yep.
Maybe Missouri.
Yep.
I can't think of any other SEC team that's got a worse quarterback receiver duo. Okay, hold on. No, because Graham Mertz is the starter at Florida. Yeah, I would take Dillon Gabriel over Graham Mertz. You got me there, but that's it. That's about it. So you've got like 11 SEC teams ahead of you. So I don't care what happens to Oklahoma in the Big 12, but I do compare how do you feel about them going into an SEC year? And I don't feel super great about them.
No, they're going to get smoked.
Agreed.
Which I'm going to love. I can't wait to see Oklahoma lose every game each year.
No. All right. So, Ben, let's go to surprise contender.
Uh-huh.
Who do you think nobody else is talking about? And I mean, I know you've got Central Florida in second. So if that's your surprise contender, that's fine. But who's a team that is nobody else is talking about that you think could make a run in this thing?
Man. I want to go UCF, but I don't want to take them again.
Yeah.
So I've got one other. Give me yours, and then I'll give you my second.
Mine is Texas Tech.
All right.
So Texas Tech has 17 returning starters. All 11 on offense are coming back, by the way. That's number one. Number two, 15 of their 17 returning starters, 15 are super seniors. So they've got 15 super seniors returning. So, okay, if you think about TCU, why did TCU go on the amazing run that they did? A, they got a favorable schedule. That was number one, right? Number two, they had a team of just a chock full ton of seniors. And TCU was involved with, Ben, last year, a bunch of just super close games. So if I said, give me one team that could duplicate what TCU did last year, it would be Texas Tech. They've got everything. They've got the quarterback. Tyler Show, transfer quarterback. He was at Oregon. He comes in. He's really, really picked up the pace. He feels like a legitimate quarterback now. They've got Miles Price at receiver and Jerand Bradley. That's a really nice combination at receiver there. Taj Brooks is at running back. Then you look at their schedule. Their schedule, Ben, super workable. Their toughest road game is going to be at Texas, but it doesn't happen until November 24th. Their other tough competition in the Big 12, Kansas State, they get at home. Central Florida, they're going to get at home. They're going to get TCU at home, and they get a bye before that game. Their road games, other road games, at West Virginia, at Baylor, at BYU, at Kansas. Like, I think there's a chance, Ben, we could see a team of super seniors kind of skirt by a lot of these teams and go into that Texas game maybe like 9-2 or 10-1. And all of a sudden we look up and we're like, wow, Texas is really competing. And Texas Tech is. And what's really interesting, Ben, Texas Tech, September 9th, will host Oregon, where Tyler Show used to play. So it's going to be the Tyler Show Bo Nix showdown. And if you pull up Oregon's schedule, so let's pull this up here real quick. So Oregon is going to play at Texas Tech, and then 2 weeks later they're going to get Colorado, and at Stanford they're going to start off their Pac-12 play. And Dan Lanning, as good as he is, I don't know that Bo Nix, when it comes to these big non-conference games, I don't feel like he plays that great. And let's keep in mind, this is a team that last year went to Atlanta, got shellacked by Georgia in the opening week, and went to Washington State a few weeks later and played a 44-41 game against Washington State. They're not immune to getting upset or being in a close game with a really tough team. But even if Texas Tech loses that game, I still feel like this is a dangerous team the rest of the year. They're going to avoid Oklahoma. They're going to avoid playing a bunch of tough road games. So they get a workable schedule, a bunch of super seniors coming back. I think they're going to win a lot of games.
I love it. Texas Tech coming back.
Yeah.
And
by the way, I watched the replay of Texas Tech versus Texas back when Colt McCoy was at Texas, and Texas Tech had Michael Crabtree. And remember the catch at like the 2-yard line, and he like turns around at the last second and like runs. It was Mike Leach. This is when Mike Leach was coaching them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man,
I think it was Mike Leach. Maybe it was. Who was coaching them then?
It was one of the two, I think.
Okay, so I mean, Graham Harrell was the quarterback, throwing to Michael Crabtree. It was all game long. In the crowd, that Texas Tech crowd was absolutely off the chain. That was one of the most insane crowds. And by the way, their uniforms then were so much better than they are now. 100% better. Anyways, and I mean, their uniforms are great now, but back then they were amazing. I watched that today, and maybe that kind of got me fired up about Texas Tech football, but then I actually start looking at the team. I think they're going to be really good. So there's my surprise contender. And I think, by the way, if they got 10-1 and they go into Texas and pull off an upset, if they did that, they will be, by the way, they will be, that's stupid. They will be in the college football contention. The only issue is Texas Tech has not beaten Texas in back-to-back years since 97 and 98. They haven't done it back-to-back years. So they beat them last year. Can they do it again this year?
All right. So my secondary surprise pick, playoff contender, whoever you want to call it, I think it's their first year in the conference. BYU.
It is their first year in the conference. How do you not know that?
Well, because I don't pay enough attention to football during the season. That's how. What happened last year?
This is my co-host.
I can't remember what year it is. Look, BYU has had an incredible team for the past probably half decade, and they keep reloading with talent. And
they lost to Liberty last year, by the way, 42-14.
Liberty had a great head coach who is gonna take the Auburn Tigers to a winning season. That's how. All right, so BYU has pulled in Kendon Slovis from USC as their quarterback. They usually have a high-powered offense. They have 3 really big wide receivers. Those are, let's see, Cody Epps, and Chase Roberts, and the last one, Keelan Marion. And
Yeah, but I think so. I mean, Phil Still, and I keep this here as just kind of like a reference point. Phil Still's got Keanu Hill as the projected starter, um, but yeah, Keelan Marion's very good. So
well, I disagree with Phil, and I also didn't buy the book this year, so there's my problem.
the guy that doesn't watch the games during the season disagrees with Phil Still.
If you look at their schedule, it's actually pretty good. So BYU plays 2 podunk teams to start the season. Then I think, do they go to Arkansas?
Yeah,
So
September 16th.
that will be an interesting game for them because they'll be playing one of the worst teams in the West. And so I think it'll be very telling. I think BYU pulls that one off.
The interesting thing is if Arkansas were to lose that game, the wheels would completely fall off of that program. If they lost to BYU, which, by the way, I've got them losing that game. But if they lose that the week before they go to LSU, they're not winning a game before that bye week.
You're not turning that jukebox back on.
No. Yeah, I think Sam Pittman would be absolutely on the hot seat if you drop that game.
Yep. Thus, the Gus era begins. But you've got BYU beating Arkansas on the road, beating Kansas on the road, then having Cincinnati in a bye week before they play TCU. I don't think TCU will be as good this year. I think they blow through them. Texas Tech at home will be interesting. And then going on the road against Texas is almost guaranteed to be a loss there. But the rest of the season, they've got West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, all winnable games if they can put together a solid offense. And their defense is actually going to be very good. They've got some incredible DBs, a couple linebackers that are solid. Their offensive and defensive line should be stout. So look for BYU to come into the Big 12 and actually make it competitive.
Well, it should be noted, like if you look at their losses last year, they lost at Oregon, they lost to Notre Dame. I think that was at a neutral site. Lost to Arkansas. They were absolutely shellacked by Liberty, and I mean, I love Liberty, but come on, that's a bad loss for BYU to lose 41-14 to Liberty. It's a bad loss. And they lost to East Carolina. They did beat Baylor in double overtime, and they did beat Stanford. So they beat a couple of Power 5 teams. My concern for BYU, because they went 10-3 a couple years ago. 2020 they went 11-1. They are going, Ben, from playing a couple of Power 5 teams in a year to playing a Power 5 schedule. And even one of their non-conference games is against a Power 5 team. So they've got 10 Power 5 games, right? And they're going from 4 to 10 Power 5 games. I think BYU is going to have the biggest drop off of them all because they've just not been at this stage consistent enough with this group. And I think with the way they went on that 4-game losing streak, there were a lot of questions surrounding Kalani Sitake as to whether or not he's going to stay around BYU and he's going to continue to be the guy. Now, were those questions warranted? We could argue whether or not they were or weren't, but those things started coming up last year. And seemingly, again, if you look at BYU's schedule, like we talk about if BYU beats Arkansas, Sam Pittman's on the chopping block. But what if BYU loses to Arkansas? And then they lose to Kansas. And then they lose to Cincinnati. Well, the schedule ain't getting easier after that bye week, Ben.
Nope.
No. So, I mean, this is another team. Like, they could kind of be a surprise contender, and maybe they win because they've got some home games. But the wheels could fall off really, really quickly if they're not careful. And I like Kenan Slavis. I don't know that he is a good enough quarterback compared to, like, I think he's good, but I think if you look at what the rest of the conference is, how much of an advantage is he actually giving that offense compared to, like, Tyler Show at Texas Tech or even John Rhys Plumlee because of how creative you can be with him.
Well,
Or Quinn Ewers at Texas, or Will Howard at Kansas State. Like
he's a
I
good
think,
quarterback, and he can deliver the football to the stellar wide receivers they have
yeah, he
on that
might be
team.
the 8th or 9th best quarterback in the conference. Is the
That's
issue?
fine. We had a walk-on quarterback win the national title 2 years in a row.
That's true.
So as
Keep
long as you
bringing
can
that up.
deliver the ball to your star players, you can win titles.
So, all right, let's go to, because I told you I wanted to talk about newest edition, who performs the best. I think both you and I are going to agree. Central Florida, I think,
Oh
fifth
yeah,
bill.
Gus Bus. Welcome
Yeah,
to Big 12.
and I would say if Cincinnati had retained Luke Fickell, I'd 100% say Cincinnati is going to be in the spot. But Cincinnati loses Luke Fickell. They only have 9 returning starters coming back. Like, I think Scott Satterfield's going to win some games. I think there's a big overreaction to how bad Cincinnati's going to be. I don't think they're going to be that bad. But I do think the losses are absolutely something. And Gus Malzahn, I think, is starting to come into his stride at Central Florida. He's been in this position before, coaching at Power 5, and Central Florida has kind of flirted around with some of this Power 5 stuff too. They've been in some big bowl games. They've won them. They knocked off Auburn, right?
Like a decade
Played
ago.
with that national championship.
Thanks to Gus.
Yeah. So, I mean, Central Florida, I think, has the most experience in the spotlight. Houston's got a really bad roster. BYU, I question a lot of things about it. Cincinnati doesn't have as many returning starters. I think Central Florida is easily the best of that new group that's coming in.
Yep. I've got to go with you right there. Central Florida is ready to compete in the Big 12. Gus has done a good job of getting them to this point. Florida as a whole has a ton of talent. And if you look at the different programs, I'd say right now FSU is probably doing the best as far as developing talent. You've got Miami, who's done a very good job recruiting, even though they're terrible. And then you've got UCF right there in the mix, probably doing better than the Florida Gators. So right now, UCF is primed and ready to actually compete in the Big 12. I think that they are a contender for the Big 12 championship, and I think they will deliver on their entry into the program. So it's going to be very interesting to see kind of them versus the two power teams that are leaving, and then what type of gap that leaves.
Let's go best game, or game you're most looking forward to, and I'm going to give you mine. Let's see, hold on just a second here. I'm going Kansas State and Texas Tech. That's going to be my best game. And I'll tell you this. So the game, by the way, is going to happen October 14th. I love these kind of early or like mid-season games where it's early into conference play because I think they bear a lot of weight, even though a lot of people aren't watching them. So first off, the week before, Kansas State's going to play at Oklahoma State the week before they play Texas Tech. So they're going at Oklahoma State, and that's coming off of their bye week. So regardless of what happens there, Kansas State then has to go at Texas Tech, which I just think is going to be an absolutely brutal place to play coming off of a bye week. And then Texas Tech, the week before this Kansas State game, they're going at Baylor, and the week after they're going at BYU. So this is a kind of sandwiched in between 2 away games. For Kansas State, it's the second of 2 straight away games. And then Kansas State is 5-1 straight up when they're playing in Lubbock, and they're 5-1 against the spread playing in Lubbock. They don't lose these games, Ben, but I think it's going to be just an absolutely wild game because I think Texas Tech is a really good team that will be flying under the radar, but Kansas State, Will Howard, absolutely amazing. This offensive line, incredible. One of the best offensive lines in the country. And Will Howard, by the way, he guided this team towards the second half of the season and into the Big 12 championship. The biggest question for Kansas State is, can they replace Deuce Vaughn, who is a 5'5" running back that's now gone into the NFL? I love watching his training camp videos because it looks like watching if you put my son on like a high school football field. I mean, it looks like watching a kid just among men. Like, it's the craziest thing. But can they replace Deuce Vaughn? And I think they're going to, Ben. And Chris Kleiman, I think, is, if you look at all the coaches in the Big 12, if I were to ask you going into any game, evenly matched teams, who would you want on your sideline? My number one pick would be Chris Kleiman. Every day and twice on Saturday. He would be, he would be my pick. The guy was incredible at North Dakota State. He's been incredible here at Kansas State. The only team he really struggles with, I would say, is Oklahoma State. He's 1-6 there and continually loses to Texas. So that's really about it. But I think that Kansas State at Texas Tech game is going to be absolutely wild, and there's lots of implications to it.
Do I have to pick 2 Big 12 teams? Or can
You
I
just
pick
got to
one?
give me your best game.
The best
Give me-
game is by far September 9th. Your potential champion of the Big 12, Texas, versus the University of Alabama, a game that went down to the wire last year.
But
This is
Quinn
a
Ewers went out last year.
Yes, he was
Yeah.
injured.
If he stays in
And-
that game, I think Texas wins.
100%. 100% Texas wins that game last year. And this year, it's a return to Bryant Denny for Texas's head coach, who I can't remember his name at the moment. It's
Steve Sarkisian,
gonna be
my
wild.
co-host.
You can.
But-
I told you I'm the 5th string on the
You're-
4th string podcast.
Stop with the bull crap. We're both the first.
I'm in when I go into the quarterback film room, I play on my phone. So that's
Are
where
you
I'm
Kyler Murray? Is that who you are?
at. Kyler Murray.
That's all Big 12 reference there. Yeah,
Yep.
I think the game at Alabama is going to be fascinating. But Steve Sarkisian, I mean, this is the thing. He's got to win one of these big games. He's got to figure it out. He constantly loses these big games. Last year at Alabama, did Quinn Ewers go out? Yes. But there were a bunch of mishaps along the way for Texas. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. Okay, so we did surprise contender, hottest seat, most exciting team, best game, player of the year, which, by the way, I spent more time trying to figure this out, and I really couldn't come up with a good answer for it. But the one I came up with is Xavier Worthy, wide receiver of Texas. I think if Texas is going to win, it's going to be because they score a lot of points. I think if they're scoring a lot of points, it's going to be because Quinn Ewers hit Xavier Worthy for a lot of touchdowns. I just do. I maybe think you could say he's a dark horse Heisman candidate. We just don't see a lot of receivers win the Heisman. But, I mean, he's easily the best receiver in the conference, I think, like easily. One of the best receivers in the country. He's going to get drafted early in the draft, probably. I just think he's a fascinating player to watch. And there's just not another player. Like, I think the most talented quarterback in the conference is probably Jalen Daniels at Kansas. But I don't think Kansas will win a lot of games. So if Kansas
Most
goes
talented quarterback?
what's that?
That's the most talented quarterback?
I'd say pure talent in the conference. Yeah. Runs it, massive arm. Yeah, great. But Kansas isn't going to win more than 6 games, Ben. So if they're 6-6 and Jalen Daniels has thrown for 4,000 yards,
Yeah.
I don't know that he's even going to get player of the year.
Yeah. Probably not.
Yeah.
Look, at Texas, you've
4,000 yards would be a lot.
You've
He's
got
not throwing
Quentin
4,000 yards.
you've got Quentin Ewers at Texas.
Yeah.
And riding the bench is Baby Manning. So, like, I think the best quarterback in the league isn't going to be playing this year. But Quentin Ewers is pretty dang good.
Well, okay, yes. No, best quarterback in the league is that. Okay, but I'm talking about starters.
Okay. Well, I mean, Quentin Ewers, I'd probably put above as just like pure talent at a quarterback level. Yeah, he's not the most athletic player, but he's a game changer. And
Yeah, I do want to see. Here's what I would love to see. I don't want to see Dylan Gabriel get injured, but I
Me
want to see
neither.
him replaced. And I want to see him replaced by General Booty. and I want to see General Booty win Player of the Year in the Big 12. If General Booty were to win Player of the Year the year Oklahoma leaves the Big 12, how is your slogan not "Kiss My Booty"?
That would
Is that
be.
the dumbest joke I've made on the podcast so far?
It's up there. It is. It is. Chef's kiss.
Thank you.
Incredible. The likeliness of it. It's. Let's just say you bet $1 on that in Vegas, you're going to be a millionaire. So, but throw away your dollar. It's cool.
I don't even know if you'd be able to bet on
a player become Player of the Year. You should be able to, right?
But not on hold on. Dylan Gabriel's first, Jackson Arnold second string, Davis Bevel's third string. I don't think you could bet on Player of the Year and bet on the team's fourth string quarterback. There's no way FanDuel gives you that option.
We are the fourth string podcast. We support our brethren.
We do. We should hold on, Ben. New theme that has to happen in every conference preview. Our favorite fourth string player. Why have we not thought of this?
Boom. We've only done this for 2 years. It's all good.
And we wait until an hour and 6 minutes in.
That's okay.
To come up with who's our favorite fourth string player. Well, I'll tell you right now, this year, my favorite fourth string player is General Booty.
There it is.
He might become the new logo of our podcast.
Incredible.
All right. What else? Is that it? Every podcast we end with what else?
Yeah.
Guys don't know how to end things.
I think that's the Big 12, bro.
We're great at starting things. Ending things, not so much.
I don't know. I don't know if we're great at starting things either.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
We just
fourth
string.
Look, sometimes I just hit start. I just think it's funny. Ben will be fumbling around with his mic or whatever. Boom, start button. Let's just go.
Boom.
I don't even wait. Somebody asked me, what? This was funny, Ben. So, literally, I think it was Wednesday. Somebody sends me a text. What do you use to edit your podcast with? Edit? What edit? I don't have an edit button. I don't use anything to edit our podcast. It's raw, baby. 100% raw. This mic is always hot, always live. No edits.
That's right. This is just pure magic.
It is pure magic.
You turn on the mic. We're just professionals.
We need
I don't
to
do any prep.
Before the start of the year, we need to stream me and you playing NCAA 14.
Okay. Auburn versus Gators. How do we stream that?
I don't know.
I don't think you can.
Can we hire a 15-year-old to show us how to stream a 360? I would pay some kid that's on, what is that computer gaming thing? Is that TikTok? What is it? Twitch. Twitch is that thing.
Yeah, there you go.
If somebody's listening to us and you have a Twitch channel and you want to make $20, I'll pay you $20 if you can show me how to stream that onto StreamYard. Xbox 360 onto StreamYard. They're like, what's NCAA 14? Never heard of that game.
You gotta take a phone and you put it in front of your TV and you hit stream. That's how you do it.
I mean, that would be how we would do it. I do have the webcam. I could probably just turn that around.
There you go.
We should do it. Yeah.
Done.
Do we want to talk about what happened the last time you and I played?
Sure. So
would you like to describe it?
Yeah.
I think it's the best ending to any game ever.
It was not. It was terrible. I had a win in the bag and just had to run the clock out.
Okay, hold on. But what was the question you asked before you called the play?
I said, what's the button to throw the ball away?
And that was the start of Ben's demise. Please continue.
So I just have to run out I was going to score another touchdown regardless. I was unstoppable.
True.
I was a total...
I mean, the game was 60 to 58 or something. It was ridiculous. Yeah.
I all I had to do was score, and we were done. And I just had to run out the clock so that no freak accident would happen. And if I had scored, you would have had to have scored twice.
Yeah,
I
I would
could
have
have
been
just
on two
scored.
possessions. Yeah.
I could have just scored and been fine, instead of being stupid. But instead, I took the stupid route because that's how I roll sometimes. I ran back 70 yards, wasted like 15 seconds of clock, ran around, and then threw the ball away. Then I got hit with a penalty. A 75-yard penalty.
It was.
I was first and goal.
Oh my god!
It was second and 80 yards.
It was second and goal from your
Or second
own
and goal.
20.
Yes. Second and goal from my own 20. There you go. The stupidest. I still don't understand how that happens. What I should have done is instead of throwing the ball away, just hit whatever button I wanted to, because he could not have thrown it 80 yards anyway.
Yeah.
So it would have just fallen in the middle of the field.
So then Ben gets sacked on the next play.
Yeah, because I was trying to waste clock and just kill the clock and
Yeah.
end the game.
So then it's like third and goal from I think like your own 15 or something.
Yeah, it was
Then
stupid.
your next play was a dumb incomplete pass. So then you punt.
Yep.
And I get the ball and go down and kick a field goal with time expiring.
Yep.
It's amazing. Okay. For everybody that put up with that, it's the best ending to a college football game ever that never actually happened. All right. In real life, it didn't happen. Okay.
Yeah, it happened in real life for me. It hurt.
Yeah.
And now
I
I'm going to
think-
go destroy Ole Miss.
Did you have to get a new controller?
I am playing with the other one, the one that's not
Okay.
destroyed.
So we did destroy it. Okay.
I did. I took it out and I beat it with a hammer.
Oh, yeah.
And I sent you a video of it.
Yes. Yeah. That video should go up on our Twitter. All right. Thank you all for joining us. This has been definitely the fourth stringest of the Fourth String podcast by far.